Accessibility is innovation. When we design products with accessibility as a priority, we design products that become better, more convenient, and more efficient for everyone. A lot of accessible design might be driven by disability access, but if you've ever appreciated curb cuts, computer keyboards, speech-to-text, smart home technology, automatic doors, you've benefited from accessible design. Accessibility doesn't hold us back. No, it helps us make better, more intuitive products for every single user. To expand on that, if accessibility is considered proactively at the beginning of a project, it makes it easier to implement other solutions in the future. I've been ETC's UX designer for a number of years now, and I can tell you firsthand, progress is being made.
My name is Kev Coleman. I am a MFA lighting design student at Northern Illinois University. I am also a freelance lighting designer in my free time. I started off as a chemistry major, and that wasn't working out for me. I found out that I would have rather have spent more time doing the arts things like playing music as a percussionist. And when I went to the music school, I said, hey, I want to be a music major. I've been playing, my instrument for years. And they went, well, we can accept you as a minor. I said, but I want to be a major. And they said, well, we don't know if you physically can do that with all of your physical limitations. You can't walk, you have some trouble with your hands, and so on and so forth. And I said, okay, thank you. And so I proceeded over to the theater, which was right next door. And I will never forget sitting down at the head of the theater department. And I said, all right, I've had this conversation now at a multitude of different departments and people in my life. And I said, is this possible? And she looked at me and she said, of course it is. We're theater people. We're creative. We'll figure it out. And about 2.5 years after that conversation, I graduated with my BA in theater. I knew I loved it all along. I knew after seeing some Broadway shows that, I love theater. I want to be a director. It would be so much fun. I didn't ever think of it as a career because I had so many people in my life tell me that I couldn't do it. You should have an office job. You should sit at a desk. And I said, but that's not for me. That is not the type of job I like to do. I like to be in there. I don't like to just read email. That's not fun for me. And I wanted to create and make something, but I was pushed away. I have lots of vivid memories of being told, you can't be a director. You could never get in an orchestra pit. I wanted to also conduct the orchestra. I was pushed away out of the industry, which then made me have to really think of what did I want to do.
My name is Brandon Wardell. I'm an associate professor here at NIU. I teach all of the lighting design courses and I run the lighting design graduate program. Before Kev was really thinking about lighting design grad school, I got a message from one of his former professors asking if he could succeed in a program like this, if he could succeed in the entertainment industry as a lighting designer.
A previous grad student from multiple years ago literally said to me on the stage of my undergraduate, said, can you see that light up there? And I said, well, of course. He said, can you tell someone to focus that on you? I said, well, yes. He said, great, you can be a lighting designer. When you say yes to somebody, you open up a door. You open up an opportunity. In fact, you open up an endless amount of opportunities for that individual who you don't maybe know that well.
We wanted to be the place that could say yes. We knew we had the ability to say yes and didn't see any reason at all why he should be excluded from the field that he was really interested in pursuing, due to circumstances beyond his control.
I still have to pinch myself and say, are they just doing this to be nice, or are they doing this because they genuinely want to and say, well, they took a chance on the disabled kid? And for the time that I've been here, it's not the chance on the disabled kid, it is you're a designer that has a disability.
When Kev first toured the building with us, we come into the theater and Kev says, this is really set up like the other theaters I've worked in, and they would put me at a tech table up against the wall, which is just a terrible place for a lighting designer to work from.
My name is Tracy Nutell. I'm the Technical Director for the School of Theater and Dance at Northern Illinois University and the head of the Design and Technology area. I rely on my engineering background to assess the person and their ability to interface with the equipment and the spaces so that I can connect their brain, which is the important part, with their equipment and their surroundings. Right? So with Kev in particular, okay, we've got a guy who relies on wheels. How can we get him to the places he needs to get to with wheels?
I'm Chris Keski. I am the head electrician here at the Northern Illinois University School of Theater and Dance. I came to meet Kev. He was actually a student of an alum of our program who's also a close friend of mine, and he recommended that Kev come down here and join our MFA lighting design program. But the first time I actually met Kev was, I believe, the day we were rolling around and go into the different venues and figure out what kinds of things we would need to make happen to assist Kev in his journey here at NIU and make sure that he could access what he needed to and do what he needed to do to be a lighting design student.
The theater that I worked out of in undergrad had a center row because we always put the tech tables here, right? Like this is where they go.
There was no way that Kev was going to be able to do lighting design from the middle of the house, which is where we typically have the lighting designer sit when we're teching a show.
So we had to get the brain of a lighting designer to the middle of the theater where the lighting designer needs to sit.
And we know that our booth is inaccessible, but this room is accessible. And so I think it was basically one email to Tracy saying, we have the student looking to come here and join our program. Is there a way to get a center row? And his immediate response was, yeah, we'll just pull out the chairs. It's no big deal.
One of the things we had to do in there was remove a row of seats to allow the width of his wheelchair to get into the position and his skill as a lighting designer.
So obviously we've pulled out the chairs and we've got this raised platform here, and it's served us really well for the last couple of years.
So many people, disabled and not, know that accessibility is possible. Personally, I think that our industry's best quality is passion. Passion to create, perform, passion for humanity and just the human condition. Disabilities don't erase that from someone, and in fact, that passion for inclusivity shines time and time again from everyone in our community. Lighting designers and theater directors and technicians find a way.
Venues are ADA compliant from a patron's perspective. Most theaters are not really ADA compliant to a designer.
There was a disabled parking space on our south side of the building, but that parking space was not near any doors that allowed a person in a wheelchair to easily access the building.
We walked around and looked at, like, for instance, the main door outside of my light shop here is right next to the accessible parking spot, but did not have any door openers or anything like that. So we started making a list of things like that.
With Kev's specific situation, one of the issues he has going into a room that has an automatic door closer on it, when Kev's got to try to get through that door, especially these big heavy doors like you have in the commercial buildings, the door starts to close on him and traps him between the door and the door jamb while he's trying to get into the room. So again, a very simple little tweak was simply slowing down the door closer. All right, easy, simple little fix, turning a set screw. That's all it was.
With the help of another student we had at the time, we started coming up with ways to be more accommodating at the light board as far as programming solutions for Kev. So we hatched a plan to get some support from the accessibility office on campus to get some touch screens in here.
My undergrad had 0 LED lights, nothing of that. So it was very easy to just go this channel up, and put them on faders to go up and down. But once I started actually having to incorporate designs with moving lights, LED lights, we ended up getting two touchscreen monitors. I put as much as I can on a touchscreen so I can just go click, 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 click. So being able to put all of my stuff in as close to me as possible.
Together, we started building magic sheets. And he really took the reins in terms of how they work for him. And he's set up all sorts of macros that will flip between different magic sheets. You know, he basically has control of the whole board on one screen. And then he can see channel levels and he can see queue numbers and he can see all of that elsewhere. But he can control all of those things from the one screen that he's configured for himself. One of the things that became really clear the first time we sat in front of a light board, and not something that I had ever paid attention to, is that I use both of my hands all the time at the light board. And so I'm always typing with my left hand. I'm always using the mouse with my right hand. And that's just not an option for Kev. We've really had to just compress everything down to a setup that he can use his right hand to control.
I quite enjoy it because it has allowed me to not have to move myself, because that takes some time. As technology advances, maybe yes, I will someday get to use a wheelchair that actually can go side to side. So I needed to have something that I can sit directly in front of, like so. So all I have to do is I can touch about 2 screens and then these as well.
And he's got all of these buttons that bring up different versions of magic sheets on the same screen. He can actually access all of the things there that I might just do this, right? I might just turn in my seat and type a couple of buttons over there and then turn back and grab the mouse. And that's just a lot harder. We knew that we weren't getting a new console anytime soon. So what we were really interested in was figuring out, so how can we adapt this?
Brandon and I had some conversations, and I said, you know, I've got friends at ETC because I'm a rigger, so I have friends that work at the company. Would you like me to reach out to them to see if they're interested in having a conversation with Kev about what they can do to make their equipment more accessible? And I also talked to Kev about it too, again, including Kev in the conversation. I said, do you want me to reach out to ETC? And he's like, oh, no, don't do that. They would never, words from his mouth, ETC would never want to talk to somebody like me. And I was like, oh, you don't know ETC the way I know ETC. I said, as soon as I make this phone call or send this email, they're going to be on you like green on grass. They're going to want to talk to you about different ways that they can help you out. I said, trust me that this is a very welcoming environment.
In having these conversations about disability, we repeatedly come back to the phrase, "Nothing about us without us," a phrase we at ETC first heard from disability advocates in our industry. We decided that we needed to take that seriously.
ETC is the creator, the designer, the the brains behind 90%, 95% of the toys and the gear that we use every single day. You all create this equipment. Would you be interested in this conversation? Is this something that we can collaborate together to create the future of making accessible lighting and accessible theater?
I'm Rebecca Knipfer. I'm the marketing product manager of rigging. So as a product manager, talking with people with disabilities, it gives me a different perspective. Having somebody with those experiences to be able to say, if you did this, it would make it better for this community. Kev's experience with rigging is pretty much non-existent. He's a lighting designer, so but that doesn't mean he can't have input. So it was really great to have a non-ambulatory wheelchair user come in to our space and look at our products. So looking at our controllers using a manual counterweight system. I asked him, I said, hey, have you ever used one of these? He said no, and I said, okay, you want to try? And so he came over and he tried it, and I think that's, it's great to have that perspective of somebody who has never been allowed to try it before, to try it and give feedback on what could be improved to make it more accessible and inclusive. Just because somebody is disabled doesn't mean they can't do something, right? So I think my advice would be find out what the problems are. What accommodations do they already make for themselves? What accommodations would they want us to make? Talk to them, have them use your equipment, be there, and then come up with innovative solutions on how to solve those problems for them and make it more inclusive.
Making an interface that supports Kev's interfacing with the ETC equipment will make it equally as easy for people who can use all 5 fingers on their hand. And it's not just that we're making this special accommodation for Kev, and I bet you're going to find that that's going to be embraced by the industry as well.
Having Kev here and figuring out exactly how he can be a part of the department and exactly how he can succeed in a future in entertainment has really opened our eyes to what other potential students can do. Incorporating the solutions that we learned through accommodating Kev in the graduate courses directly affected the undergraduate courses in that we can now get more projects done in one semester because we have everything we need already. And we have templates for dance concerts, and we have pre-visualizer templates, and we have all of our theaters built in 3D, and we have all of the digital stuff that we need to let everybody in the program sort of work in the same fashion.
Knowing Kev has opened up an entire community of people who use wheelchairs to me, and I've been able to interface with them, people from Southern Illinois, from California, from New York, like from all over the country, and get different viewpoints of like, well, this would really help me out, or this would help me out, and so on and so forth. So it's really gotten me to look at things like shop work and fly systems and automation and just interfacing, whether it's interfacing with a computer or interfacing with a fly line.
The other thing that having Kev as a student has sort of allowed me to take part in is having an accessibility conversation with professional theaters in the region, having accessibility conversations with the facilities people here at NIU, with the dean, with all sorts of other people in the administration, all of whom's immediately, almost everybody's response when we ask an accessibility question is, yes, absolutely, how do we do that? And they just never thought to ask.
There are millions of people right now with disabilities that would seem to conflict with what they've chosen to do with their life, but they're still doing it, and oftentimes the presented obstacle isn't actually about the disability in the first place. It's the environment and the societal norms surrounding that.
To get a seat at the table, at the conversation table, is hard for a person of color, of different sexual orientation, of disability, of whatever marginalized community that they belong to. It is super hard for them to get a seat at the table of any discussion, let alone, for some very odd reason, it's really hard for them to get a seat at the table when it's a discussion about something that they live. And there's something to be said about, okay, I understand you, I hear you, I'm with you. But there's another to actually take the action.
Well, we recently had a conference in New York that brought together people with disabilities and people who design spaces, which was a wonderful conversation to have because, again, throughout my career, the conversations we've had is a whole bunch of people who are not disabled sitting around in a circle talking about what those poor disabled people need, and they're not part of the conversation.
I personally am really enjoying our working relationships with ETC and being able to collaborate on what is coming next. What could be next? We as a company didn't think about how we could adapt this. We thought, oh, well, it's on a phone, it's on a tablet, or yeah, sure, why can't you just reach the button? Or, we as a company, we don't think about that. And a lot of people don't. And I don't blame anybody because that's fair. It's not in everybody's paradigm to always think of what is inclusive. And so I think for me, getting to work with ETC, I think we've gotten to help push that to at least the folks at ETC's front of mind and being part of their design process. It is my hope that we can all create together to keep equitable solutions for all.
So if we remove, all of us as product managers, remove those unintentional barriers that we've placed, we make it a much friendlier space. And we open it up to a whole bunch of other people that may have been told no their whole lives. And now they're being like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's try it. Let's see.
We know that there is a lot of work to be done, and we're not going to do everything perfect right off the bat. But we as an industry need to show that we want feedback. And when we do get it, we're welcoming it.
And so we're asking all kinds of questions that no one, at least in this department, has ever asked before, which I think is a service not only to Kev, but to the rest of the university.
It's our job to create the tools so that anyone out there can try and discover and create by removing the obstacles that we may have unintentionally built into our systems.
ETC everywhere is one of the slogans. We want to see ETC products everywhere, right? If we expand that and we say ETC everywhere for everyone, right? We want to make this for everybody. We don't want to exclude anybody from the magic of theater.
More and more people are becoming involved and supportive of accessibility initiatives. Instead of questioning if accessibility will happen, our teams are questioning how we can make it happen.
What can we do as the people who are designing these systems and people who are installing these systems and people who are creating these systems? How can we accommodate everybody in the creation of these systems?
Why is it important to do advocacy work? To me, is to help make people aware. Having advocates and being an advocate, for yourself, but being an advocate for others, helps getting more and more and more people in the door. It is such the cliche thing to say of follow your dreams, but I think in reality you can. There's nothing stopping you, so just do it.
I cannot describe how thankful we at ETC are for Kev's openness and transparency and willingness to work with us.
just his interfacing with entertainment, but interfacing with the world.
Are you talking about me again?
Always. Talking about you, not to you. Go back to sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.